Okay, hi all, this is Param. In this episode, let us see what are the important objects available in Kubernetes. Okay, so for each object we will have separate episode or videos. Okay, but in this video I will give a high level information about the each runtime object. Okay, so whatever the object I have crossed, okay, so I have keep it here, but there is a lot of object object introduced by the CRD in the sense custom resource definitions, okay, by the CRDs. So say for example couple of object runtime object introduced by the elastic for Elasticsearch, Kibana, something like that. Okay, so the number of runtime objects keep on going because of Kubernetes plugin capabilities. Okay, but we will see in this episode only the core object at least. Okay, without installing any new plugin or new package. Okay, what are the core level of core object or important objects provided by the Kubernetes? First thing is promote the pod. Okay, pod in the sense is a minimalist unit or minimalist object, okay, which is wrapped the one or two containers, okay, and it is managed by the Kubernetes. Usually pod will be the runtime object. Pod will be running in the worker node. We will talk about setup in later. Okay. Second thing is deployment. Since pod is low level unit, okay, or leaf node, we can say a low level object. Okay, we will manage the pod using a deployment. Okay, so as by the deployment we will get the replica set. That is a replica set here. Okay, so the deployment in turn it use the deployment replica set for the scaling perspectives. Okay, how many pod we want to create for a particular containers. Okay, so container wrapped by the pod. Okay, pod is managed by the Kubernetes. Okay, so how many pod we want. So let's say if you are getting more workload or during the weekend. Okay, so then during the weekend we can scale up. Okay, let's say our front end applications, maybe instead of one or two we can create 5 pod. So the 5 pod all the 5 pod will receive the request from the load balancer. Okay, so that is what. So how many creating more than one pod for the same container is called it is managed by the replica set. So okay, replica set managed by the deployments. Okay, so the role of deployment is to manage the pod and its replica set. Okay, then service. Service is the third object. The numbers I just gave based on my understanding. Okay, so it is not like given by the Kubernetes teams. Okay, so services used to expose the pod to the client. Okay, to the client may be internal or may be external. Okay, services it has 3 types. Okay, one is cluster IP. Cluster IP is a very one default one. In fact, it is internal client can be reached. That means from one pod to another pod can be reached. Okay, that is what internal. Okay, not external. Okay, so that is what cluster IP. Then node port. For each node of Kubernetes cluster, okay, a particular port will be exposed. Okay, so with the node IP address and the port, we can access to the pod. Okay, that is again node port will be used for the testing purpose only, not protection purpose. But if it is protection purpose, we will go for load balancer type. That is third type of service. Okay, so there we will get a new IP address, public IP address. Through that we can reach the pod through external. From the external. So that means within the pod we are going to run the actual container. So pod is exposed to the internal or external through external customer by the service. Okay, then daemon set. So daemon set is used to run some services in the worker node. Usually this daemon set run for kind of logging, okay, or some startup task has to be done. So that is or across node level has to be across node level we want to do something, we want to run something, that is where the daemon set comes. Ingress. Okay, ingress expose. Okay, say for example for let's say we have 10 services, all the 10 services are exposed to the customer through services. So 10 services. Okay, then 10 services we will have 10 different IP addresses, because of service is a resource object that will have the IP address, service name, DNS name, all the stuff. Okay, port, in fact port also there, the port also will be there. If the number of services, if it is only 3 or 4, that is fine, we know it ingress. Okay, if you are running only 3 or 4, if you are having only 3 or 4 services, internal or external, let it be. Okay, that in that case if we know it ingress. But if we have more than 3, usually every application will have minimum 30, 40, or it can go the minimum 1000 also. Okay, so in that case we cannot open, we cannot have 1000 port to be opened for the external traffic, right? So that is where ingress came. So ingress will work either host based routing tool or path based routing tool. It's very simple. Okay, it provide two things: DNS name or domain name also it provide. Okay, so based on the domain name, based on the host domain name or host name, both are same. Okay, so based on the domain name we can route the traffic to a particular service, or based on the path after the something.com or something. Okay, after the domain name start with the /, then we can check something, some path. Okay, some path can be there. So using that path we can define the routing rules. So if it is, let's say, shield okay, some sample.com / shield, then the path has shield here, right? So in that case we can forward to different services. So the benefit of ingress is we can have more than one application, we can run more than one applications. Okay, all are exposed by single URL or single path. Okay, so that's the benefit of ingress. Otherwise we have to run 1000, we have to run one equal number of external services. It is difficult to manage. Volume, yes. Volume is a storage volume, kind of NFS or file systems. Okay, NFS file systems. Usually for the stateless and stateful deployment, if I creating any pod by deployment, that is called stateless. If I create any pod which need a storage space, that is called stateful set. I think it is there here. Yeah, it is here, a stateful set. Okay, so stateful also it is a object. Okay, it is an object, stateful object. It okay, its pod will have the mounted volumes. Okay, so for keeping the data. Okay, so if it is restarted, yes, if it is restarted, it will again mount to the appropriate path and provide the data. I mean, will have the data access. Okay, that is what volume. Namespace is just logical namespace, logical segregation or separations. Okay, there is a couple of object can be namespaced, couple of object is not namespaced. In fact, for example, volume is not namespaced, but pod, deployment, service, everything can be namespaced. Okay, so only subset of object are allowed to namespaced. Okay, remaining are global, I would say like cluster level object or global object within the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, secret is just a place to store key value pairs. Okay, kind of username, password or something like that. Config map, this is also again key value pair. Okay, config map, let's say kind of database URL or some important service name, all things are just store the values, configuration values in the config map. Helm chart is different. Helm chart is not object of Kubernetes here, but I'll tell you what is Helm chart. So Helm chart, let's say we have Kubernetes cluster, but we have deployed a couple of applications. Okay, for each applications we will go with the declarative approach, that is writing YAML file for them, or we call as manifest files. Okay, so those manifest files to be can be shared with others. Okay, so in the case, instead of sharing each file separately, or instead of installing each file separately, we can run as a group of manifest file that can be easily deployed in by single command. So that is a benefit of Helm chart. Helm chart is a easy way of managing more than one Kubernetes manifest file or YAML file. That is the purpose of Helm chart. So these are the name of the objects. These are the name of the object, at least important object. Anyone who work with Kubernetes, they have to be familiar with this object. Okay, we will see each object in detail in upcoming episode. Thank you. Thanks for watching.